Hello, New York Giants fans. Welcome back to the Everything New York Giants podcast with New York Giants Fangirl. I'm your host, Adrianna. Today's episode, I'm recapping the Giants versus Jets preseason game and then also sharing my predictions for the 53-man roster, so make sure you stick around for that. Let's quickly talk about the Giants-Jets preseason game. I don't really have a lot to say other than it was very frustrating, and I know most people don't care about preseason. I am just so competitive that I now hate the Jets so badly that I just need the Giants to beat them at any opportunity that they can, and it's unfortunate that they didn't. So that's a bummer. They lost 10-6, and it was ugly. There were a lot of things that I saw that were frustrating. First of all, let's talk about this. Let's start with the quarterback, Tommy DeVito, because the amount of comments that I get from people being like, Tommy DeVito should be the starter. Are you watching the same games as me? Because I am 100% positive that we are not. I understand that the offensive line was very bad versus the Jets, but he also has no pocket awareness. None whatsoever. You guys want to shit on Jones for that? You think he's bad? Tommy DeVito's 100 times worse. The amount of times that I saw over and over again, snap after snap, where he had literally no idea that there were multiple men coming at him was a little horrifying to me. And I know that he's young and he's still learning, but enough with the fact that he should be the starter, because he should not. And he won't be, but just know that he should not be for a lot of reasons. So let's quickly just go through some stats here. He was 14 for 27 for 103 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He was sacked 8 times. Now, a lot of that has to do with Joshua Ezeudu being a god-awful tackle and Evan Neal just being Evan Neal. One thing I will say about Neal is I went back and watched all of his snaps. Thank you to Nick Filato, who posted it on Twitter. If you want to see it, Nick has it up there. His run blocking snaps were actually not horrific. Like, I was expecting to see bad after bad after bad, and I was a little bit pleasantly surprised that it was not horrific, which says a lot about my expectations for Evan Neal. So it was better than I expected. Pass blocking, absolutely horrible. He just moves so slowly. I don't understand the thought at putting him at tackle. Like, when you watch Andrew Thomas move and how agile and athletic he is for such a large man, Evan Neal is not it. So I really need them to think about moving him to guard ASAP. And same thing with Joshua Ezeudu. For the love of God, we are the 6th team on waivers. Bring in a swing tackle off waivers because he's not on the roster right now. We'll get into waivers too, and I'm going to do an episode later this week about the guys that they bring in, because I'm sure there's going to be a few of them over the next few days. But it's enough. The Ezeudu and Neal tackle experiment should be done, and it should have been done months ago, and the fact that it's still going on is extremely frustrating to me. But oh my God, I can't. I was trying to focus on Neal during that video of every single one of his snaps, and all I see is DeVito getting sacked because Ezeudu can't even stand up straight. It is beyond frustrating. Okay, let's talk about the rushing attack now. Switching gears. DeVito, 5 carries for 48 yards. Dante Miller, my man, 14 carries for 45 yards. Joshua Kelly, 8 carries for 40 yards. And Allen Robinson, 1 for 10. I was very happy to see Dante Miller back in the mix, also known as Turbo. I think he looked pretty good. And he's just a guy that I'm really excited about, the fact that he can play special teams. So wait to see what happens with him on my roster. Let's talk about receiving. Miles Boykin and Jack Stoll both led the charge, each with 2 receptions for 24 yards out of 3 targets. John Giles had 1 for 21, which I'm sure you guys all saw, the beautiful hurdle. Now, I said this a couple weeks ago and I say it again. I don't want our players hurdling people. What I will say, Joshua Giles was beautiful. That man must have been a track star in a former life, because that was a really nice hurdle. Very impressive. I still don't want to see it from anyone because it is way too risky, but I did enjoy it for a second. I was like, he's very impressive. Isaiah McKenzie, 2 receptions for 15 yards. Lingard, 1 for 6. Bryce Ford-Wheaton, 1 for 5. Allen Robinson, 1 for 4. Isaiah Hodgins, 1 for 3. Joshua Kelly, 2 for 1. And Dante Miller, 0 out of 1 targets, and Ayer Asante 1 catch out of 3 targets for 0 yards. So 103 passing yards on 14 receptions. The fumbles, and I know I talked about this last week. I know that some of these guys are not going to be on the team more, but the fumbling, especially from someone like Isaiah McKenzie on the return, he's been in the league for a long time. You're a veteran at this point, and not only are you a veteran, you're a veteran special teamer. We cannot deal with another year of watching our potential punt and kick returners bobble the ball. It's too much, okay? I don't know why it's so hard for this team to get someone who's consistent. The one guy who is consistent, our boy Gunner, is dealing with an injury right now. So I need to stop seeing that. It's very frustrating. Asante had 1, Bryce Ford-Wheaton had 1, and then so did Isaiah McKenzie. Now, McKenzie also recovered 2 of them, but it's like enough of the stress, like the stupid stress that they put on fans like that. Drives me crazy. Let's switch gears to the defense. Honestly, I don't really have anything noteworthy coming out of this other than I like Dante Miller. That's it. Nothing else noteworthy, I don't think, about the offense. If you think there's anything else noteworthy, please put it in the comments on YouTube, because I just was really not impressed. Oh, okay. Well, this is special teams. Graham Gano. I don't even think, actually, now that I say that, I don't even think it was not even Gano who was kicking. Never mind. Let's go back to the defense. CJ Cloyd, a guy who literally came out of nowhere, and everyone has their reasons for wanting to get on Joe Shane for his decisions, and that is fine. There are some decisions that I wildly disagree with that he has done. Insert 5 seconds earlier when I was raving about our swing tackle situation. CJ Cloyd, a guy he brought in out of nowhere, led the team with 16 tackles. I think that also was the most tackles from a defensive player on during this whole preseason. So literally came out of nowhere. Also had 8 of those tackles were solo, 2 tackles for loss. Alex Johnson, Kyler Bott, Tyrion Beavers. Listen, I was high on him last year. I can't. He needs to be off this roster, and the fact that they already made their first set of cuts and he was not on it was mind-boggling to me. The fact that I'm looking at his stat line and he actually had 6 tackles is surprising to me, because I am fairly certain that every single time I saw him attempt a tackle, he missed it. So I must have been blinking or my eyes closed during the 6 times that he actually tackled someone. Tomon Fox had a good game. He had 5 total tackles, 3 solo, 1 sack, and 2 tackles for loss. Now, I think he's going to ultimately be a practice squad guy, but I'm glad to see that he's coming back on. He was UDFA last year and had some good snaps, got some, when he was in, he made some good plays. So I think he's a guy that I would keep around on the practice squad. I'm not so sure he's good enough to make the roster, but I do like Tomon Fox, and I like his body of work at this point. Obviously, I'd like to see him, along with literally every single person on this roster, take it up a notch, but so far, I like what he's done. So the team actually had 3 sacks in total, 1 of them coming from Tomon Fox, half a sack from Jordan Riley, and then Benton Whitley had 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hits. This was probably his best game, and he's a guy that also seemingly came out of nowhere and has looked quite good. So see where he ends up when we get to the 53, but I think that he's done a really nice job, and I would like to see him at the very least be on the practice squad, because from what I've seen from him, I really like, and I think that we should see more of him. He's a guy that I think has that potential. I also feel the same way about Alex Johnson. He was behind CJ Cloyd with 6 total tackles, 4 solo, and I just think that we have seen good play out of him even throughout the summer and throughout training camp. Next up, I don't really think there's anything also of note. Jordan Riley also had 1 quarterback hit. Tomon Fox had 3 quarterback hits. So those, I guess, were my stars of the defense, were CJ Cloyd, of course, Alex Johnson, Tomon Fox, and Benton Whitley. So the team had 78 total tackles, 35 solo, 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections, and 7 quarterback hits. So not so bad from that perspective, but also not amazing by any means when it came to a lot of other things. So let's talk about special teams now. Okay, punt returns. Like I said, Isaiah McKenzie had 3 of them for 11 yards and also bobbled two of them. So Asante, 1 punt return for 9 yards, and then Bryce Ford Wheaton, 1 for 0 yards. So special teams, killing it. Who is killing it is Judd McAdamney, who is the kick the field goals. He went 2 for 2. The longest was 43 yards, and obviously put up the only 6 points for the Giants because they couldn't score a touchdown. So overall, good day for him. I feel like Jamie Gillen, has been hit or miss. 6 total punts for 296 yards. His average was just under 50, and he had 1 inside the 20, and the longest was 57. So that's all I got. Listen, I would have liked to see the Giants win. I would have liked to see them all play better. Like I said, I know it's preseason. A lot of those guys are not even going to be on this roster, and also a lot of them are second and third stringers for very obvious reasons. But just for my own sanity, I would have liked to see them win. So before we get into the 53, I just want to pull up this tweet that I have from Dan Duggan, so we can talk about what their schedule is going to look like this week in regards to cuts and things like that. So the Giants have already cut 10 players. I will get into them in a second. Today is their day off. So according to Dan, and I think this makes perfect sense, they're likely not going to call players and bring them in just to cut them. So I think that's why they did the first round of cuts yesterday, and then they have to be down to their initial 53-man roster tomorrow. They are also going to hold a light practice tomorrow afternoon. So tomorrow, Tuesday, will be the day that there will be a lot of cuts. So make sure you follow me on Instagram at New York Giants Fangirl. The whole thing is spelled out because I will likely be going live here and there when all the cuts happen, and then especially when the waiver wire stuff starts Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday should be their last camp leg full pads practice with the practice squad assembled, and then Thursday will be a light practice, and then they're off until Monday, and Monday is when they start the Vikings prep. Now, when Dable was asked about whether or not they start the Vikings prep now, he said no, they don't start it until next week, which I think is interesting. He said the coaches will start sooner rather than later, but the players not until later. And listen, Dable can do whatever he wants to do. I just feel like this team needs a lot of help. So, I would like to see them start game planning for the Vikings yesterday. But it's not up to me. So let me pull up the list. So the first player that was cut, not the first, but this is one of them, Matt Nelson. So we didn't really see a lot from him, so no surprise there. And then these are the rest of them. Running back Joshua Kelly, running back Lorenzo Lingard, wide receiver John Giles, wide receiver Aguirre Asante, offensive lineman Marcus McKeithen, defensive lineman Kyler Baugh, linebacker Trey Kisner, cornerback Breon Borders, cornerback Christian Holmes, and safety Clayton Isbell. None of those are surprises, but I will say I was a tiny bit surprised that they cut McKeithen only because the Giants drafted him in 2022, and he ended up playing some games last year. Now, he wasn't really very good, but I was just a little surprised only because he was one of their draft picks. So with that being said, let's get into the 53. So I have 26 offensive players that I think they're going to keep, 24 on defense, and then the 3 special teamers I'll say right now because I don't think there's any surprises here. Graham Gano, Jamie Gillen, and Casey Kreider. If they do keep a 4th, which I don't really think they're going to, it will be Judd Atamny. Okay, back to the roster. I think they keep 3 quarterbacks. I don't think there's any scenario in which case they don't. After what happened last year and this team with the injuries, I just would be absolutely shocked if they don't do that. So, 3 quarterbacks. Jones, Locke, DeVito. No surprise. Running backs. I don't really think there's any surprise here. I have them keeping Motor, Tracy, and Gray. I unfortunately think that Gray is going to take the roster spot over Dante Miller, but I do think they're going to put Miller on the practice squad. And if there's any which case scenario where they end up keeping 4, obviously it will be Miller, but I just am not so sure that he's done enough just yet, which is a bummer for me, but we'll see what happens. Wide receivers, I have them keeping 7. I have the 4 obvious ones. Slayton, Hyatt, Neighbors, Wandale. No surprises there. Gunnar is obviously not a surprise to anyone either. Now, right now, he is week to week. I believe he's dealing with a groin injury. So if he starts on PUP, then I think McKenzie will get the roster spot just for not just for special teams, but he's more so likely going to be the special teams returner with Gunnar out. If Gunnar's healthy, I don't think McKenzie makes this team. The last two I have are Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson. I think that they like the fact that Robinson's a veteran. The wide receiver room is extremely young, and from what I've heard from what it's like seeing Robinson at practice, he's very much a mentor for some of the young guys, and they speak very highly of him and like the things that he says and does in the locker room. So I don't know, that wouldn't surprise me, and I do feel like he could be a decent target for Jones. And he's a decent size, so I have that as an option. Let me know what you guys think. Tight ends, no surprises here either. Bellinger, Theo Johnson, and Chris Manhertz. I have those as the three. Obviously, Cager is going to make the roster, but I think that he's also going to be a pup candidate because Dable said he's going to miss some time, also dealing with a groin. He didn't say how long, and this was before preseason. So there's a possibility then at this point that he could be ready for week one, but if he's not, I think he's going to be a pup guy. Lastly, I have the offensive line, and I have Thomas, Stinney, JMS, Neil, Runyon, Greg Van Roten, Illuminor, Schlotman, and Azudu. And God help me, like, did I want to put Azudu on this list? Absolutely not. But I just think they're going to keep him. And I have no answers as to why, but I just, based on what I've seen in camp, the fact that he was one of their draft picks, I mean, the fact that he can maybe play guard as opposed to tackle, again, I don't know why they think he's a good tackle or serviceable at it for that, because he's really not. I would like to see them move him and Neil to guard. Both of them have guard experience. That's what they did more so of in college. Put them there, please. So that's what I have for the offense. I have 26 players. So if you guys have done your 53s, drop them in the comments. Let me know. I'm curious to see how we differ. I think we're going to be alike on a lot of things, like some of the obvious ones, but I'm curious when it comes to offensive line and things like that, what people end up doing. Now, my 24 defensive players are as follows: Edge, Burns, Kayvon, Aziz, and then I have between Boogie and Benton Whitley as the fourth one. Boogie has been up and down during camp, but he did look pretty good. And I know he's a Buffalo guy, so I just feel like, I don't know if that's going to give him the edge there, but I also feel like Whitley has done a really nice job in preseason. Could they also pick someone up off waivers? Absolutely. So if I had to pick one of them right now, I'm going to go with Whitley. And we'll see what happens. For the nose tackle, I have Dexter and Jordan Riley. Defensive tackle, Nacho and Elijah Chapman. Inside linebacker, Bobby O, Micah McFadden, Carter Coughlin, Deontay Johnson, Darius Mosso, and Matt Adams. I know Deontay Johnson is dealing with an injury, but I just think that he's one of the better candidates that we have seen at linebacker throughout the summer, and I really hope he's healthy soon because he did a nice job, and I would like to see him make the 53. For nickel, I have Drew Phillips and Isaiah Simmons. That's what he's listed as right now on their depth chart. Cornerback, I have Banks, McLeod, Flott, and Trey Hawkins. And then safety, I have Pinnock, Belton, Nubin, and then I'm between Jervarius Owens and Alec Johnson. Now, Jervarius Owens was having a nice camp before he got injured. He is a Joe Shane draft pick. But I think that Alex Johnson has also done a really nice job throughout camp. So as of right now, I'm going to pick Alex Johnson. And I think that because Owens is dealing with an injury, he's more likely to be a practice squad guy. So that's it. That's my 24 defensive picks. I think out of the guys that are not picked that I think are going to make the practice squad, here's who I have as my definites. Miles Boykin, because he can also play special teams and he was a pretty good wide receiver. Jervarius Owens, Turbo Miller. I don't think Hager's going to be a practice squad. He's going to be a pup guy. Who else? Jetta Tumney. And I think that's it. Those are the guys that I feel strongly about that I could definitely see on the practice squad. Also, Jake Kubas, who did a nice job at offensive line, but I just don't think he did enough to make the roster. In front of a vet like Schlotman and in front of Azudu, which I'm rolling my eyes for those of you who are not watching because like I said, Izudu is not my guy, but I don't, whatever it is about him, they like him, they must see some sort of potential, so I think he's going to make the roster, and then Kubas will be a practice squad guy. So now let's quickly talk about waivers. These are positions that I think they are going to go after big time on the waiver wire. Cornerback. Surprise to no one. I think they also could go for safety, but I don't think that's going to be a priority. I think the biggest priority is going to be cornerback, wide receiver. No, I changed my mind on that. It's going to be corner, offensive line, defensive line. So like edge or nose tackle or defensive tackle. I think it could be any one of those. I could see them going linebacker. And then I think those are the top ones that they will definitely go after. Something I also wanted to point out is that it is looking like there's going to be a good possibility that James Bradberry is going to get cut from the Eagles. I think I speak for most Giants fans that we would take him back in a heartbeat, because looking at our cornerback room, you would have to feel way better about it having James Bradberry on the list. So he is a name to watch specifically during waivers. Someone else I would also keep an eye on, and let's see if I can pull up his name real quickly, was the defensive tackle on the Jets who did a really nice job on Saturday. Hold on, let's see if I can pick up his name. Also, someone that I didn't talk about is Darnay Holmes. I don't think he's going to make the 53. I know that they love him so much. I don't want him on this team. He can be on the practice squad. He can be a special teamer, but he doesn't need to be on the 53. Joe Shane, don't do it. Please. We don't need him. And I know it's enough. It's enough. The Darnay Holmes experiment is done. Just like the Azudu and Neal experiments at tackle are done. Okay? Please, make it stop. Leonard Taylor is the defensive tackle from the Jets. Another guy. Keep your eyes on him. He had a really nice game on Saturday, and I know he's like a second or third stringer, but this is what happens with the waiver wire. We picked up Jason Pinnock last year, who literally came out of nowhere, and now he's a starter. So there are going to be some guys out there that I think will be good fits for this team. So stay tuned. Make sure you like, subscribe. Please rate and review the podcast. If you like it, share it with a friend. I'm going to have 2 podcasts a week. The season's coming. A lot of good stuff coming up. And listen, this is the exciting time of year. We got waiver wires. We're going to have some new players on this roster. So again, make sure you're following on Instagram too, at New York Giants Fangirl. I am the most active on that platform. I post multiple reels a week. I'm on stories on there all the time, and I go live a few times a week. So I do a Q&A every Tuesday. If you have any specific questions, get them in tomorrow when I put the box up. But I'm heavily all over Instagram. So a lot of exciting stuff going on there too. So make sure you guys follow along, and listen, let's go Giants. We're going to be excited while we can, okay? Thanks for listening. I'll be back soon.